Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights. We are back in the studio with Dave and Amy Byers, and this time we're going to talk a little bit about something that I think people don't always get right or don't always understand properly when they see this space for the first time, or even if they've been in it for 10, 20 years. So I want to talk a little bit about the contractor model and how we actually relate to FedEx. So you're an independent service provider, an ISP with FedEx, or a transportation service provider, a TSP. What does that even mean when you're talking about who you are when you relate to FedEx? What do you think of FedEx as in this model?
So for us, FedEx is the customer.
Okay.
100% customer. We are a vendor. We carry a vendor badge. Our employees carry vendor badges. They are employees of Slicker Trucking. So there is an arm's length relationship. And what that arm's length is the ISP or TSP agreement that we sign. That's the distance between our customer and our employees. That's the separation. And I think that independent service provider agreement, ISPA, is P&D, and TSPA is line haul, and we are both. So we have to follow all the rules, and they're different in each sandbox, if you will.
Yeah, and we call them contractors. How back when the model was IC, when it was actually just an independent contractor, how do you think about what today is versus what that was? What's the change there in the model and what you are as actual relationship to FedEx?
I would think back in the day it was focused more on just a single van contractor model. There were so many of us, and that's kind of what it was focused on. But over time it's evolved into more of a multi-van contract. And now we truly run it as a business. We have HR support, we have payroll, we have payroll taxes and benefits and 401ks. And we've never had that. We didn't have that back in the day. It wasn't even brought up. So now we actually run it as a true corporation.
Yeah.
And I think from the FedEx standpoint is I don't think that the contract has really changed all that much. But our expectations that are in the contract have obviously grown quite a bit. Compliance, audit, regulations, guidelines, and things like that are built in the contract now. But the relationship really hasn't changed a ton. It's still that buffer. But I think that it does get muddy. That FedEx is asking me to do this, or FedEx is asking me to do that, or our customer wants us to do this. And at the end of the day, it's not. It is, in fact, whether you're an ISPA or a TSPA and you've signed those agreements, or if you're an ISP, TSP, and signed those agreements, I think the big thing is that those are guidelines that you've signed. If you read it, you should read it. I have one with me almost all the time. If we travel, we have it with us. I have them printed out at my desk so I can reference it quite a bit. I'm very much always in safety and driver qualifications because that's kind of my bubble. And the managers and Dave are constantly asking me questions about what section of the contract that's in and what does it say, how do I treat this? But it's never, FedEx wants us to do this, or FedEx terminated my guy, or FedEx DQ'd my guy. Well, that happens, but it's not. You signed an agreement that held you to an end result based on what you've agreed to. So at the end of the day, yes, FedEx had you sign the contract, but you signed it.
Yeah.
So now these are things that you have to adopt and put into your business. So the relationship with your HR team and your references need to be between Slicker's ISPA and the employee. And that one does get, like I said, it gets super muddy because what do? We service FedEx. And it gets blurry. So I think understanding that, I always talk about, stay in your lane or know your role or, can use all these like fun things. But at the end of the day, it's very easy to manage when you take that understanding, not easy to manage all the things, but easy to understand. A better understanding of who we are in the network gives you a better understanding of how to manage your business. And that's, I think, the easy part of just stop looking at it one way and really manage it as your own. the cool part about it is they do let you manage your own business, right, wrong, or other.
Yeah.
It's yours to manage. They don't want to manage it. But they're giving you the guidelines. You've signed the contract. You stepped into the sandbox with all the tools and all the things that you have to do. And now you have to execute per the agreement that you signed.
Yeah.
So nothing's forced, nothing's, kind of mandated outside of what's mandated in the contract, which again, you agreed to. Mm-hmm. So I think it's that relationship between, are they a partner? Are they a vendor? Are we a vendor? Are they our customer? And what that looks like.
Yeah.
I don't think necessarily the contract has changed a ton. Expectations of when Dave was one guy, it's just the things that are now expected of us have grown quite a bit. And then, little things of how we pay people. You're obviously not 1099 anymore, and there's some protections. But I really don't think, being the compliance girl, right, the one in the office that's kind of putting the HR things together, I don't think there's one in there that I would say, well, that's just dumb, right? Like, there's things that you have to do. And at the end of the day, when we lean in, it's made our company better. But you're not dealing with a mom and pop anymore, right? You're dealing with a company that is a full organization, and we need to communicate like a full organization, and you need to run your business like a full organization and read the contract and know what you've signed up for.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe more loosey-goosey, hey, I showed up, where are the packages?
Yeah.
Maybe when Dave was one guy, one truck, those compliances and checkpoints weren't there. But they've, but every year you have a clear opportunity to sign or not sign.
Yeah.
So you're walking into that, like I said, you're kind of jumping in the sandbox with both feet. I think that's a big difference.
Yeah. And really understanding FedEx as your customer, like you said, not your partner. They're not your business partner. They're not your employer. How do you see people getting that wrong? Like, what are the problems that could come from not properly understanding what the relationship really is between you and FedEx?
So I think if you are in the transportation industry and you just think of an example outside, right? You're ABC Trucking and you're going to go for bid, right? And Josh owns this company and I want to service your contract and I win the bid. That's the same relationship, right? Like, you have the opportunity to service that customer. So I would see you and your company as a customer. I wouldn't see you, even if we're friends or even if we're friendly.
Yeah.
There's a line where I've agreed to provide services to you, and you are my customer. And I think that line gets blurred, whether it's interpretation at the terminal level. I think that has a lot to do with how terminal managers or local managers treat the staff and the demands that they make, instead of presenting them with the issue and allowing us to problem solve it based on what's in our contract. So I think that makes it a little bit muddy. But again, not bad. They're trying to help. They're trying to relate and communicate. And I think, Dave always says, like, you've never been in a truck, you've never even gone on a ride along. How do you know what we do? So those are some hard things to have the relationship. But I think over almost 20 years, Dave's earned 25, because we actually know people from Columbus when Dave was a package handler that are now running terminals up north where we service. But I think having those relationships, whether you consider yourself friendly or coworkers or whatever that looks like, your colleagues in this industry that you're playing in the sandbox with, right? At the end of the day, they are our customer. So the answer that Dave pushes forward is always say yes, right? We're gonna make it go away. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna do it. We'll make it happen. We'll cover it. No different than if you went to a restaurant and you wanted your food cooked the right way, or every customer vendor relationship has expectations. And this one is, very complex. It's gotten much more complex over the years, but that, I think, is where that fuzzy or muddy, relationship, and some terminal managers keep it very black and white. Like, this is, we are your customer, and some you forge relationships with. But at the end of the day, the contract is going to hold you, to disqualifications and requirements and hiring requirements and truck requirements and timelines and service and all the things. Everything is in that contract. It's a wealth of information. And I think when you jump in, there's really only 2 or 3 sections that you need to put your nose in. Everything else is, leases and, very, very simple, documents that are, more black and white. But the ones that are to be left to interpretation, I think, are the ones that, and those are the ones that we take a little bit harder, because as contractors, we do wear our contract on our sleeves, right? We're super proud of what we do. We're very passionate about our employees and what we do and how we do it. So when it's a contract level no, or a contract level, it's, well, FedEx is making me do this, or the customer's asking me. No, it's in Schedule I, or it's in Schedule, it's in the schedule, so you have to read it, and you have to know it, and be beholden to it, and really, service that contract, because whether they looked it over the other time or you didn't do it, you want to make sure that you're operating to the letter of the contract. And once you embrace that, it becomes a lot easier to be an ISPA or any ISP and a TSP, because you know what the rules are. You know, when you got into the sandbox, what you're being held to, instead of saying like, how did this happen? You're like, well, it's in 6.4.
Yeah.
You just weren't looking. It's not fine print. It's there for you to review. So I think and if you lean in and embrace it, it becomes a much richer relationship with your customer that provides growth opportunity and a little bit of forgiveness and a little bit of, conversation even, to when you have those bad days. You can call, and Dave has a good relationship. He's like, hey man, I get it. Like, tough day. Guy walked out, or guy got sick, or guy had to leave, and we're going to do our best, but we'll catch up tomorrow. We have a plan. And I think that's, he's become very respected in that way. So I think that's the important piece of that customer relationship is realizing, any other trucking industry, you go for bid. You have all these trucks and you need a new contract. You're one of 5 or 6 that are bidding on it. And the ability that FedEx gives us to renegotiate without going out for bid is actually a really fantastic privilege and benefit of, as long as you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
There's that.
But it is like when you're going out for bid, your goal is to know what they expect and to fight to maintain a high level of customer service so that they continue to come back to you or may choose you in the future. And it's the same here, except for, like you said, we get the benefit of having, we have the rights to this lane or these zip codes, and it's just that they have laid out in a contract the things that they're expecting of you, and we have signed that contract.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do think what you're saying is correct, that it's a mental shift to a certain extent of understanding how this is and embracing it, because it can be hard to just, feel like this person, especially when you're talking about a terminal manager.
One person.
Yeah.
It's the guy.
you see often, maybe not every day, but often, and you're like, that is the problem, is my relationship to him. But ultimately it is this person's
I have a tough terminal manager. They won't let me do this and this. And the other good thing is, I think, Dave, as you've mentioned a lot of times, is they give you a ton of chances, right? Like, they give you the tools, whether sometimes they're not 100% transparent, or maybe they are, but they give you Spotlight. They give you the DSW. They give you FCC. They give you access to what's going on in your business. And then you add in amazing technology like Ground Cloud, or, some of these other, Truck Spy, or whatever, these monitoring, whatever you're in, there's from Ground Cloud to my Ground Force to there's 1,000 of them, right? That are there to help you, Tire Savers, RCPA with fuel cards. You have all the tools to run your business and to manage it. So when you're not doing great, it shouldn't be a surprise, right? You've stepped outside the sandbox, right? You've broken some rules, or you're missing the mark on some things. So I think that's the key, is to get ahead of it. But nothing should be a surprise. If you know your contract and you know who you are, know your role, then nothing should be a surprise. And FedEx is fairly forgiving on some things. Some things they just can't move the needle when it comes to disqualifications and integrity and things like that. There are some hard lines. You should know those things. But as far as, the opportunity to cure, curative letters, letters of intent, or letter of assurances, things like that, like, those are things that if I were doing business with Josh would be like, yeah, I'm going to go with that guy because that was a little bit of a problem last year. And FedEx is not like that. Our customer wants us to be here, even though sometimes it gets super bumpy, but they're very transparent about what that relationship has looked like over the past year.
Yeah. So we talked some about how that impacts, your relationship with the actual customer. How does that dictate your relationship to your actual employees? How do you inform? How you have to actually hold them accountable? How does it go into things like an employee agreement? How do those things apply?
Yeah, we just had that with one of our drivers. Dave, we had a really tough conversation. Good guy, just had some misses on signatures, and it became a big integrity issue. And we went back to the contract, and the contract, was like, well, the managers, my BCs, were like, hey, FedEx is DQing this guy as of Friday. And I'm like, no, we should DQ him because in our contract it says that that's a zero tolerance, that we will not assign services to any personnel that does this. So, it's a sticking point with some of the things, and we are having conversations with our customer to allow us to maybe change or mold maybe what that looks like going forward. So is there a depth or a level or, is there retraining that can be done, or what does that look like? But right now, I read the contract and we had to terminate that employee, and not because FedEx told me to, because that's what my contract says I need to do. So I agreed to that. And Dave and I had to have the hard conversation when my business actually says I'm going to retrain based on Ohio guidelines. I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to give them an opportunity to fix it and, disciplinary track. That didn't stick this time. So understanding kind of what that relationship looks like, we are completely shifting our handbook. We're giving much more transparency to our employees of the zero tolerances, the 36-month suspensions, even what a DUI looks like and what an SAP program looks like for that. So we're doing a little bit more communication, but I think that's the tough part, is that's the agreement that he signed. I'm held to it. I have to hold the employees to it, and we have to also educate with our BCs so they know what to do when something happens. It's just like reporting an accident. Do you look the other way and hope they don't catch you? No, you have to lead with integrity and, take it on the chin and report it when it's reported. And sometimes it's, it's super uncomfortable to do the right thing, but the contract's there to hold you to doing the right thing by your customer. And I always say, you hear me say it all the time, my only customer. So I don't have in the trucking industry, like I go out to bid with Josh and I go out to bid with these other people. I don't have that. FedEx is my only customer, so I can't screw it up, right? And you have to do every day, you have to get up and monitor those contracts and play in the sandbox with the rules that you've agreed to. So I think that's the big thing. And again, it's not hard and it's not icky and it's not, no one's screwing you. I think it's just once you change that mindset, that a better understanding will lead to a better understanding. It really does open you up to running your business better and having a more respectful and an open relationship with our customer.
And I think ultimately that is really important for having productive conversations with the customer,
when you
with
need
FedEx
to,
about changing or at least being open to modifying some of these policies that are grayer. So if you're constantly the person who is just bashing the customer and talking about how it's all their fault that they are, the problem in the network is them exclusively, then when you come and you then have a problem that you're actually trying to resolve, it's difficult to have those conversations when they know what you're coming from and they haven't seen a bunch of open, kind of transparent, productive conversations from you in the past. Whereas if your baseline is, I understand the contract, I understand what's expected of me, I've signed that contract,
right.
But I still see some issues with X, Y, and Z. Here's some data, here's some reasons I want to have this conversation.
Yeah.
It's very different from the customer's perspective, and it's much more likely to be, effective.
Yes, definitely. They're more open and amenable to having conversations when you're communicating with data and fact and pointing to maybe some things or misinterpretations in the contract. Can you just clarify? So those things, those definitely. And again, when you sign the contract and understand that you've signed it, right? They're your rules and regulations, even if they're fuzzy. In your mind, you can ask for that clarity, but it's not. They're not just out there to smack you around. And I think compared to other businesses that we run, pizza shop, things like that. I mean, there are so many benefits to this network and the way that the contract is written, right? We get paid every Friday for over, almost 20 years. The check always comes. Sometimes it's wrong, sometimes it's right, and usually it's right, but they always fix it very quickly. So I think that's a plus when we've been in other consulting businesses or service businesses where we have to wait for the 15-day net or a 30-day net or somebody pays late. So there's a collection process. Like that doesn't happen. With our pizza shops, we have to advertise, right? So there's a budget that we have to then pay out to get new customers. Well, guess what? You don't have to do that, right? You sign the contract, the boxes come. They always come. And that's the beautiful thing is that it's a security, right? And if you get too far away from it and too much in this, they're my partner, they're supposed to be treating me better, blah, 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 and you're not leaning into what the relationship really looks like, you forget those benefits.
Yeah.
You forget that you don't have, any accounts receivables when it comes. It's there every Tuesday. You know what you're getting, and then on Friday there it hits.
Yeah.
So there's some really positive things. The contract renegotiation, the fact that I don't have to go out for a bid if I've been doing all the things the right way. Growth opportunities, and then the marketing, right? I don't have to do that. Come summer, hopefully FedEx is going to, fill my funnel. They're going to be out there with their sales force, and they're going to be leaning into new relationships and things to bring us the volume so that we can continue to employ and grow and do, maintain the trucks and do all the things that we need to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's just the biggest, understanding, when it comes to vendor, partner, friend.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And there's all kinds of things to understand about this model. And I don't want to discount and say that people won't struggle, that it's not like there are things that happen in the model. There are things that happen in this business where you will struggle. There are entrepreneurs that will struggle and will not succeed in this business. But most small businesses fail. Most of them do. And most of them fail quickly. And you think about this, I see people come in all the time that, they get into this business and they last for 10, 20 years. It's a really strong model for a way to be an entrepreneur with a lot of security compared to just about anything else that you jump into. So there are pros and cons. There's things to understand about the model, your relationship to FedEx, and you should go in eyes wide open because you're signing that contract almost day one.
Yeah.
So make sure you know it. But at the same time, just like you're saying, I think it's really important to understand how that model impacts you, but also the benefits that come from that type of model.
Yeah, and there are ways. I know the big, kind of elephant in the room when we talk about the contract is the financial piece, where people are struggling. There's plenty of opportunities along the way to provide hard facts and data.
Yep.
And if you're not getting that conversation opened with your local team, there's ways to escalate, and there's ways to escalate. There's always someone that's willing to listen, whether that's something that you're doing wrong, or you need to, trim the fat, or maybe you're doing everything right and there's just something that's amiss. But I think those are, definitely things that you have that path to ask questions. You're not just stuck. Yeah. I mean, if I were doing business with Josh and his company, if I signed that contract and things changed, I might not be able to change things.
Right.
But there are things that we're stuck when the economy changes, we don't get to say, okay, well, fuel's $2 more a gallon, so I'm going to push that onto you, right? We have to get a little bit creative. Yeah. So we do understand we're not immune to any of the, uncomfortable things that happen in trucking. Yeah. Or two engines go at the same time. That's tough, right? That's capital and credit card bills and things that cause you a lot of stress. But again, I think this is one thing that Dave and I lean into as far as understanding that contract, and it really does give us a better understanding, because even our managers are like, hey, they're doing this, and they do. I'm like, no, we agree to that, and now we have to make good on it.
Yeah. It impacts how we operate, but we did agree to it.
Yeah, but we did agree to it. Yes, it feels very icky today to let that driver go, but he also kind of should have known better. Yeah. So.
Perfect. Well, this is a topic that you could dig into all day.
For
There's all kinds of things. So I appreciate you. I think it's just important to right size the thought process on what your role is and how you fit into the FedEx equation and how they are your customer.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Josh.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.